The temperature is getting cooler in the city of Abuja. Good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makine. It's 32 degrees centigrade here in Lagos, and it is May the 14th. If it's your birthday, I say happy birthday. Well, Maupe, I have the pleasure this morning of being the one to take you to Zamfara, your own neighborhood right there. And this is where we're going. Just look at this beauty. This is Gusau Dam in Zamfara State. And I don't know what you think, but all I want to celebrate this morning is the beauty of this place. The beauty of what I'm seeing. That's all, Markwe.
Well, I've always wondered about the fascination with water. And when you say you want to celebrate the beauty of this place, I was going to say, well, maybe because that's all there is to celebrate. Because when you look at why this was built, this is another interaction of man with nature and using technology or trying to apply technology here, the Gusau Dam, as I already highlighted. But when you think about the fact that this is an abandoned project, the fact that, you know, we built this or we started this project some 42 years ago, and we're still where we are, we have not brought it to completion, we have not found a way to make sure that the irrigation purposes for which it was set up, the farmers in the area are able to use it for that, or that the electricity which we could generate from this is being generated. And you know that, well, maybe apart from the fact that it looks very nice up in the air, you know, there's actually very little to celebrate, Ayo.
Well, it's an unfortunate truth, but we can't really take away the beauty. And I also know, I mean, it might be lost on some that it's not that efforts haven't been made over time to try to bring this dam back into action. Just as you said, I just didn't like the idea of having to celebrate the unfortunate. 2006, we recorded a sweeping incident that took away quite a number of homes and displacing about 1,000 or so people. Of course, we know that the following year there was efforts by the federal government to rehabilitate it. Even in 2010, we understand that some people asked for an investigation to be conducted on how a former governor mismanaged about 1 billion naira loan for the dam repairs. But I just want to celebrate this beautiful thing. Now, is this a white elephant project? That's another conversation altogether, Marco, if you ask me. It's another conversation altogether. Will this project ever see the light of day? Let the people who formulated the idea of it, who came up with the idea of this dam, let them answer those questions. But let it be on record that posterity is there to determine how well we do or we didn't in the course of time. In the meantime, please, let's savor the beauty of Nigeria.
As sunny as possible. After all, we promised you a daily dose of sunshine. Isn't that what we promised? But sometimes you also have to face the reality that is our country, that all is far from rosy. But not because efforts aren't being made, but sometimes we all see differently. Let's go, for instance, to the National Assembly, where, particularly in the House of Reps, where a very important conversation took place on the floor of the House. Currently, they're debating the constitutional reform bills before them. 7 of them were presented yesterday, and it does appear that it did not quite scale through. There were, of course, voices for and sometimes voices against, but at the end of the day, the majority had their way. there are also talks around, you know, whether the bills could still be saved. Maybe it's just because we're not looking at it very clearly, or the fact that they've lumped all of the bills together. Some people are saying, no, we've lumped all of these bills together. Why don't we separate them? As you know, has now been adopted, because that was not always a tradition. What used to happen was that we would have all of these constitutional reform bills, we would have a debate on them, we would lump all of them together, and sometimes they do scale, you know, all of the processes within the National Assembly and even the state houses of assembly. But when they get to the presidency, to the executive arm of government, where they should get an assent, if the president says no, that's it. All of them, all of that hard work done over the course of 4 years goes down the drain, and then they'll have to start again. But I think it was Senator Ike Ekweremadu who suggested that all of the bills be separate. Each amendment as being proposed is made into a separate bill, so that if one of them, if they're not happy with a part of it, the rest of them do not suffer. They're able to consider them bill by bill. But yesterday in the National Assembly, in the House of Reps, 7 bills were lumped together, and they suffered the fate of the nays. Let me put it that way. The nays had the day, let me say it that way. But what was this bill about? It was about rotational presidency, something that has been a bone of contention since the time that President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua became president of the country. There seems to be an unspoken, from what we understand, gentlemanly agreement within the ruling party at the time, which it would seem that, you know, has now been adopted by the country, that there will be a rotation of presidency between the North and the South. The PDP, we understand, has it in their own constitution. In recent times, some people argue that it has cost them the fate of their party. I mean, what is currently happening, they say at the root of it is the fact that the PDP could not live with the agreement within its own party. But national lawmakers were trying to put this in the constitution to say that not only should it be between North and South, it should be amongst the different geopolitical zones of the country. But yesterday there were arguments for and arguments against, some of them really very powerful, poignant arguments against it. And at the end of the day, it went the way of the nays. But here's how it went, how our correspondent, Terry Kumi, captured it for you.
The Deputy Speaker presides over the first plenary session of the week in the Green Chamber. The House delves into the order of the day with 7 constitutional amendment bills listed for second reading. All the bills are thrown open to a debate. However, the one which seeks to provide for the principle of rotation of the offices of the President and Vice President among the 6 geopolitical zones of the country sparks a debate. Those in support of the bill believe it will address the issue of marginalization.
In Nigeria today, zones like Northeast have been marginalized, and they need to be given fair treatment. And zones like my brother Honorable Falake's zones have been, so far they have spent 12 years as president, and we believe that's enough for Southwest.
If this is entrenched in the Constitution, it will bring justice and fairness, because let's not deceive ourselves. There are some zones, if it is left open, a certain particular zone in this country will continue to dominate.
For all the lawmakers, the demerits outweigh the merits.
If that geopolitical zone has its own shot, the next one will wait for about 48 years. Regardless of the quality of people we'll have in that zone, this country will lose that opportunity of bringing people that will render public service for this country just because of regional affiliation.
If we come to the Southwest, I'm from Oyo State, who takes it? Is it Ogun? Is it Ondo? Is it Ekiti?
Mr. Speaker, I implore that we do not set a dangerous precedent and put it in the Constitution without due diligence, which I'm sure the Constitutional Review Committee will do so. But while it tackles injustice, I must agree with the previous speaker. This could really set us back. And finally, unfortunately, we are but human beings. What happens in the event of death?
All 7 bills are put to vote at once, leading to their death.
For it to progress, say aye.
Those against say nay. The nays have it.
Efforts are then made to save some of the bills.
My request, my appeal, is that I move that we rescind that decision and the question be put per bill. If we reject one bill and reject another, we might find one that we want to accept.
Let us rescind by tomorrow and take care of all this one after the other.
Following the directive of the Deputy Speaker who presided over plenary, the 7 bills would likely be reconsidered on the following legislative day if the Chairman of the House Committee on Business and Rules lists them as motion on notice for rescission to allow members vote on these bills separately. And this is because members had specific interest on specific bills as debated on the floor during plenary. From the National Assembly, Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
So that's a lifeline there being provided, those bills. But then there are those who will say, on matters of constitutional amendment, shouldn't we get a more, a clearer voting process? A situation where lawmakers actually say, I vote for this or I don't vote. You know who has voted for what. There are those who have raised objection with the fact that when it comes to constitutional matter, the voice vote is still what is used, and it ought not to be. You know, these are very serious matters going into the ground norm, and as such, we should know where each lawmaker lies. Ayo, what do you think?
Well, the issue that has been raised on the floor of the National Assembly is no mean one, particularly the voting pattern that you spoke to. Well, you know, the question one wants to ask is exactly what are the interests at play here? It's quite salient, the point that one of the legislators made there, that, oh, okay, if we have to rotate it geopolitically, each state may not get a turn until another 48 years. And so what? It's just my own thinking, because there is hardly any part of this country that we don't have valuable people. Nigeria is not, this idea is not novel, it's not new. I understand it is what upholds in Switzerland or maybe 1 or 2 other countries of the world. So it's not like these things are not possible or not good ideas. The question we want to ask is, what interest is at play? What are we prioritizing? Are we prioritizing national development or regional interests or political interests or state interests? At the end of the day, for me, Marco, that is what matters the most. What interest are we protecting? What is our goal as a nation? What is it that we can do to harness national interest, national cohesion? One of the legislators raised the fact, Marco, that some regions of the country feel marginalized. Some have never produced any, be president or vice president. And even when they go into the national assemblies, how many times do we hear their voices? So the question, that for me, that's what matters here. What interest is at play? And I think it is something that we should give serious thought to, Marco.
Well, clearly, some people also say, where is the argument for merit in all of this? Where is the argument for leadership in all of this? But what do you think? Tell us what you think using the handles showing on your screen. Write to us at sunrisedaily@channelstv.com or send us a tweet at, or is it Exos? Exos at Sunrise Daily Now. That's our handle. And let us know what you think about these bills that have now gone the way of the nays. You never can tell, as you heard from our correspondent, it just might come back. But we will be right back. We need to take a break at this point, and we'll delve into the matters for the day. Please stay with us.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us. Well, the controversy continues to trail the weekend primary election of the APC to pick candidates for its council polls coming up. Right now in our studio, we have Honorable Sheye Oladejo, who is the spokesperson of the APC in Lagos, to respond to some of the issues that have been raised so far. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Morning. Well, the issues are diverse. First of all, how many complaints have you received?
I'm not in a position to be precise, but when you compare to the number of local government chairmanship slots that we have to fill, I can just say we have pockets of complaint, which is not really out of place for party tickets that are competitive, and we know the value attached to it. And we also know that there's always a price to pay for our success over the years. So you understand the passion attached to it and the interest of party members to pick those tickets, because most likely they're as good as winning when they pick APC tickets in Lagos.
But you do know that there have been protests as a result of those as a result of the complaints?
Yes, I'm aware. And those protests, too, are just within what I'll call normal expectation at this point in time, and is within the democratic rights of those who are protesting, which we welcome as a party, and that's why we're addressing it by setting up an appeal committee to link to all these protests.
What are some of the issues that have been raised, in your opinion?
Well, a whole lot of issues bordering on some people not qualified to contest, which will be determined by the appeal committee, or the process being manipulated, which that committee is also empowered to look into. But I don't want to preempt and address specific complaints, because that will be undermining the power of the committee so set up.
We had a guest here yesterday who was representing the Yaba LCDA, and one of the complaints he brought forward was that the APC, that the election, the primaries that held, did not quite align with the rules set up in the party's constitution. Can you corroborate that or refute it?
When you agree to be a member of a party, a political party as it were, or an association, or even a community, it behoves that you submit yourself to abide by the rules and constitution and the laws guiding such an association. When LASER released the guidelines for these elections, we also released our set of guidelines, which were well publicized, published in national dailies. And those guidelines speak specifically to the way we will conduct our guidelines. And our constitution allows us to have our candidates emerge, either through consensus or direct or indirect primaries. So we decided to have consensus where it was possible, and indirect primaries where consensus did not work. So precisely those are what we did.
There was a particular, for instance, there's one that I'm reading in one of the dailies here, talking about the fact that some people were rejecting the outcome of the Bariga and Shomolu APC chairmanship primaries, because as far as they're concerned, that they do not have authentic chairmanship candidates, as the process that produced them was considered fraudulent, monetized, and manipulated. Is this part of the process that...
All these opinions are personal, and it depends on the side of the divide those people are. All politics are local. When you could have consensus, it means that the leadership and the membership of the party in the specific local governments agree to that consensus and the candidates. And where that was not possible, we had delegates from various local governments who were also executive members of the local government area of the party who voted for the preferred candidates. So to just dismiss the process that way would not be fair to the process that produced those candidates.
Is it also true, because that's one of the allegations making the rounds, that a member of the GAC's child was favored because of the father as a member of the GAC?
Let me just say very clearly that this last process was not influenced by the GAC in any way, because clearly what the party decided was everybody should have a level playing field to fairly contest. I also want to put it on record that it is not a crime, it's not against the law that some leaders have been in politics and their children are also political actors. And for that reason, they should be denied the right to fairly also compete with other members for political offices. That would not be fair. What would be wrong is when those children, so to say, are accorded undue favor as a result of the status of their father. And that, to the best of my knowledge, did not happen in our party. No, it didn't.
But that's the allegation out there, that some of these people were favored because of the position of their fathers.
No, you have allegations from everywhere in this kind of situation in a way to prove your case. It's for you to it's not enough to allege. The important thing, the honest proof is on the person that is alleging.
I know that Malcolm would also want to come in on this, but let me quickly ask you this question. What, from the feedback that you are getting, the general notion out there will probably be that maybe there wasn't enough consensus in these particular localities. In fact, I saw a video where some of them was alleging that the activity of the Lagos APC in the run-up to these primaries could also cost the state the way it cost the APC, the way it cost the APC, you know, during the presidential elections.
Oh, that was a fluke. What happened during the presidential election was a fluke. And a few days after that election, that situation was reversed. That's to show that that was a fluke. And let me also make it very clear. We actually had consensus in just 4 local governments. Ijede, Awori, Iba, SCDA, and Lekki. Those are the only places we had consensus. For all others, we had indirect primaries, where we had delegates voting for the aspirants of their choice, and they emerged through this process. It was an open thing. So it wasn't a case of imposition. And where we had those consensus in those 4 local governments, all the stakeholders signed off.
All right. Marco, go ahead.
So the question will then be, why are there, you know, problems? Why are there complaints trailing this particular primaries if it was a simple process of voting?
Oh, well, you expect that as politicians, whenever a process appeared not to have ended up favorably, they will look for excuses to see if they could still pick the ticket through some other means. So it's not totally strange that people will complain. But over time, since the advent of this dispensation, our process, our system has been proven and trusted to deliver the best candidates for our party during elections, and they always go on to win. We also manage this. We have internal mechanism to resolve all those conflict areas, and we'll approach the election with a united force come 12th of July.
Well, that's not what your party members say. Some of your party members who have spoken to us say that the influence of Baba Sokwe is still very strong, as Baba has said, for our viewers who do not speak Yoruba, talking about the kingmakers and the influence of the godfathers still very strongly felt, and that sometimes the process is not as straightforward as you're trying to make it seem. And there will be questions as to why is this so? Because voting should be one of the fairest ways, one of the most transparent ways that, yes, you might have done all your lobbying, you might have, you know, sought your support from wherever, but at the end of the day, when it comes to brass tacks, it should be that the way the voting is conducted is clear, transparent for everyone to see who eventually carried the day.
Well, there was voting. To the best of my knowledge, there was no issue of Baba Sokwe. Every politics is local, and interestingly, this happened to be a local government election. We had a process where we had delegates from the various local governments, the 20 local governments and the 37 local council development areas, who were all duly accredited, and the voting was in the open. We brought all the TV stations in the full glare of everybody to see what was going on, and the votes were counted after the voting, and the results declared. So the issue of undue influence of Baba Sokwe, or whatever name they want to call it, is uncalled for in this case. I think it's just a case of giving a dog a bad name in order to hang it. The process was very free and fair, but the case, as it may be, they still have the opportunity, and I will want to enjoin those who are protesting to seize the opportunity of the appeal panel to make their case clear for all to see.
Would you say then that those who are complaining are bad losers?
There are members of our party, we're all family members. In the APC family in Lagos, nobody really loses. If you don't pick it today, there's always another opportunity to still be a part of the government.
I understand your diplomacy, but if you say that there was nothing wrong with the process and it was free and fair and everybody could see that those who were declared winners were those who actually won, and it would mean that those who are complaining just for the heck of it, or that they are sore losers. Is that what you're insinuating?
Politicians should learn the art of managing whatever situation. This is the only game where you can have a draw. There must be a winner. Some other person will have to wait for another day. It's a process we've all accepted, we've all signed off on the guidelines for the party, whatever comes out of it. And let me also say that that process was highly successful. We have people from about 6-7 local governments protesting out of 57. That is a very, very good pass mark to me. Quite excellent.
Well, I did hear Mr. Babatunde Ogala SAN, who was the chair of that committee, say the same thing. He said that as far as it's concerned, they even got 80%, and that will even be. That would qualify as more than good, so to speak. But it also in this game, in the game of politics, 80% good is not good enough. If people are dissatisfied and they are complaining, you cannot dismiss the complaints of the 20%. Just as you cannot have a draw in this particular game, if this is a game. So there are questions as to what then, how then would you be seeking to resolve the complaints? Because you've asked them to bring forward their complaints, you're willing to look at them. What then will be the resolution if it is already agreed that indeed the process was free and fair and it is uncertain why people are complaining?
Let me just assure you, and of course by extension members of the general public, that our party will not dismiss any protest, no matter how minute. And that's why we have a committee in place already, the appeal committee, headed by Mr. Lawal Pedro, SAN, who also happens to be the Attorney General and the Honorable Commissioner for Justice in Lagos State. It is very deliberate, intentional, that we put a legal head as the head of the appeal committee to look at all those gray areas. And let me just assure you that the committee, headed by Mr. Lawal and other eminent politicians who are leaders in our party, will look at all these areas of complaints and ensure that justice is not only served, it will be seen to be served. And I want to assure all those who are still discontented to just continue to maintain the peace while they are encouraged to approach this appeal committee for redress.
Well, Mr. Oladejo, for you, looking at the process, I want to imagine that you were there on that day. You were part of the process, and you must have seen, just how things transpired, how they played out with the congresses. What would you say can be improved upon? Yes, you might say that the process was very well done, it was very well conducted, but as with every process, people say you can always improve on something. What would you say needs to be improved in the process of the APC primaries?
Well, we need to continue to engender understanding. We need to continue to ensure that our members familiarize themselves with the guidelines guiding our various elections, by extension, the constitution of the party. Because when you look at some of those complaints, you realize that there have been cases of people not being adequately informed and well acquainted with the process itself. I think if members deliberately go out of their way to be sure of the guidelines attached to all of this and avoid unnecessary rumor mongering and avail themselves of the opportunity readily available in the party to have good understanding, going forward, this process will be improved and more acceptable to all and sundry.
Now, if you were to recommend, or rather advise, based on the appeal committee's function, how should people table their complaints to the appeal? How does the appeal committee work?
Oh, yeah, the appeal committee would only address petitions, not protests on the street. We expect that they will state their peculiar cases depending on, and I want to believe that these cases vary from local government to local government. I have seen a local government claiming that the candidate that emerged, as it were, will be going for a third term. They will need to say that clearly, and maybe they also want to help the committee by stating the relevant laws to their grounds. And same thing will apply to all others who claim there was no voting, there was no consensus. And the committee will be able to look at this individually on its own merit and be able to make a recommendation to the electoral committee, which we now have to reconvey to consider the report.
Well, you just said now,
committee.
Yeah, you just said now that the election is in the first half of July.
Yes.
It's less than 2 months
Yes.
away, if memory serves me right. How long does this appeal committee have to ask?
Oh, barely a week. Barely a week, everything will be ratified and right on time for us to submit our list of candidates to LASEC. So there's still enough time to look at all the issues still outstanding and make sure that we put our house in order.
From what time to what time does this appeal committee sit?
1 week.
What day? From what day?
It started from yesterday till next week.
Okay. And when will the final list be out?
Oh, after the report of the appeal committee has been submitted and it has been considered by the electoral committee and the final submission made to the party. It's the party that will submit the list to LASEC.
Well, one can say that it's unimaginable that the appeal committee will appease everybody. So is there a plan to calm all nerves so that they don't work against the party in the elections?
From our history as a party, we've had tougher situations. I mean, during governorship election and the rest of it. And somehow we always manage to resolve all issues. So if such full proven process is not broken, why do we need to fix it? We will appeal to our members, and I can assure you that everybody will shield their sword before the election. I will go there with a united force and win, as usual.
Okay. We have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Honorable Sheye Oladejo is a spokesman of the APC in Lagos. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Before we take on the next conversation and take a break, let me inform you that the Federal Ministry of Works has announced a planned road closure for critical repair works on the Ijora Marine Bridge from Sunday, May 18 from 7 a.m. on that 18th May 2025, and it will last 21 days. The closure will be full at some sections of the bridge and partial at other sections. This critical project aims to improve road safety and enhance the driving experience of motorists. So once again, the Federal Ministry of Works has announced a planned road closure for critical repair works on the Ijora Marine Bridge from Sunday, 18th May 2025 at from 8 a.m. and it will last 21 days. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take on our next conversation. Do stay with us.
Welcome back. Yes, we are switching gears to the education sector. We did mention this week the controversy that has trailed the latest JAMB results release. And in this instance, yes, a lot of people did complain. Initially, JAMB had said, oh, this is a trend they have noticed in the last couple of years. It's unclear why there are so many complaints, but it would seem that they have soft-pedaled a bit and have now released another statement saying that they are going to take a second look at the complaints that people are making. In the statement that they released, they say they acknowledge the significant volume of unusual complaints following the release of the 2025 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination results, which were officially published last Friday. In response, the board is fast-forwarding its annual system review, a comprehensive post-mortem of the examination process that is conducted each year, months after the exercise. So they're bringing it forward. And they say they're particularly concerned about the unusual complaints originating from a few states within the Federation. So it doesn't seem to have affected all of the country. It says they're currently scrutinizing these complaints in detail to identify and rectify any potential technical issues. To assist in the process, they've engaged a number of experts, including members from the Computer Professionals Association of Nigeria, chief external examiners who are heads of tertiary institutions, the Educational Assessment and Research Network in Africa, measurement experts, and vice chancellors from various institutions. And the last line says, if it is determined that there were indeed glitches, we will implement appropriate remedial measures promptly, as we do in the case of the examinations themselves. This statement is signed by Dr. Fabian Benjamin, who is the public communication advisor at JAMB. So this is the new statement issued by JAMB, say they're going to be looking at the complaints so far. They're fast-forwarding their review, and they have these very eminent bodies, and that if they did find, or if they do find that there are glitches in the processes, they would issue remedial remedy, as the case might be. Well, to take a look at this latest stance of JAMB and perhaps what should happen, is this comprehensive enough? We have joining us this morning Mr. Boson Ayeni, who is the CEO of Compumetrics. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. It's good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Malcolm. Good to see you again.
Well, by the way, I'm sure you must have done really well in your JAMB. Were you surprised when you saw the scores released by JAMB on Friday last week?
Well, Malcolm, I wasn't surprised. Thank you for mentioning that. I believe I did well. You
weren't surprised?
No, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised. In fact, my first reaction when I saw the statistics that about 70%, nearing 80% didn't score above 200, I was like, isn't that normal, you know? And indeed, in recent time, it's near normal than disnormal in terms of pass rate. However, yes, well, thanks for asking about my result. I wrote JAMB in 1992, a long time ago. I'm one of the privileged people that were lucky. In fact, my friend would tell me, blessed to write it once. So passing JAMB at first instance is a blessing in Nigeria.
Indeed.
And the situation has gotten worse, Malpe.
Sadly.
I have just done a quick engagement with ChatGPT. I didn't have to check anywhere else, asking series of questions. And the hypothesis, my position based on the data publicly available, is that more people are passing JAMB than ever before, scoring 300 and above. And a lot more people are failing JAMB than ever before, scoring below 200. So what that suggests is that the disparity between those who do well and those who don't in JAMB has widened significantly, especially since CBT started.
Some people will say, doesn't that speak to our educational system?
Not quite. Because if you look at that in comparison with WAEC, the number of people that sit for these two exams are comparatively close. Difference of 10%, 5%, 10%. So each one can be a mirror for the other. And the number of people that have 5 credits in WAEC, including English and Maths, since CBT started for JAMB, has been improving.
For JAMB or WAEC?
For WAEC. Whereas for JAMB, the case has been a reverse. So the hypothesis would be to say that something about the CBT is widening the gap. Now, of course, traditionally, as students, we would say JAMB is more difficult than WAEC. So
I thought so.
I thought so too, and I'm sure most students think so. So the fact that there is a difference in the pass rate is not the issue. The issue is that these two exams have a different direction, inversely proportional in their trend. So, and it's the same, well, similar numbers, and I'm sure quite a number of students write WAEC and JAMB in the same year. So the question would be, what is happening differently? What's going on with JAMB?
Yeah. So for me, I thought you were going to go ahead to to answer that question when you posed it, because I don't imagine that it's a rhetorical question. What is happening differently with JAMB? And why were you not surprised when you saw the results? If you were not surprised when you saw the results, were you surprised when you heard the complaints that trailed the results?
Yeah, so it's the complaint that actually got my attention, not the score.
Okay.
You know, seeing a lot of people complain, you then begin to ask, okay, JAMB, what really happened? And their response sheds some light. Now, I'll take it from two perspectives. First, luckily for me, I'm in the IT space. And personally, professionally, I've written over 50 CBT exams for professional certification track. So it's something most IT people are familiar with. CBT exams are usually easy to do, easy to write. In most instances, they give you results immediately or a few days after. What I think is going on with JAM, and I'll keep putting this in the space of hypothesis, think, and so on, is that the students writing JAM they are facing tests, not just for the content of JAM questions or the exam, but they're also being evaluated implicitly for their use of computer. And that perhaps is what's making a difference. And it would be nice to see much granular data around performance in city centers versus performance in outer city centers, performance in the north versus in the south, where you would assume that computer appreciation and access to computers, there is a significant difference, especially at secondary school level. So it would be nice to look at those things. It's important for JAM to be a bit more granular and analytical in the data that they've produced since 2013 when they started the CBT program. So yeah, it's not surprising from that perspective, but I'm sure there are certain things JAM can look at and improve the performance.
Well, now they have released a statement and they have talked about this experts that they are engaging, including members of the Computer Professionals Association, chief external examiners, heads of tertiary institutions, educational assessment and research network in Africa, etc., etc. How confident are you that this particular committee or experts that they engage in, I don't think it's a committee before I put words in your mouth, but that these experts that they're engaging would actually be able to get to the bottom of what the complaints that they're receiving are?
Yeah, I mean, nice pool set of experts. I think anyone will perhaps maybe want to add one or two, but otherwise it sounds really perfect pool set. But what is more important is the data set made available to these experts. JAM need to make available data pre-CBT and CBT, year by year, detailed, granular statistical information that can be analyzed with AI these days, and in a day or two can provide certain trend. We can take specific hypotheses and validate those by just analyzing the data. For example, just looking at what is publicly available, it will seem that the disparity between those who do well, there are more students scoring above 300. About 10 years ago, only, in fact, pre-CBT, 2012, I think, only 3 people scored higher than 300. And now they're having percentages and huge numbers of people doing that. At the same time, the fail rate, if I may use that word, is increasing significantly. So, but that is not the case for all tertiary exams. So is it that JAM is becoming more difficult as the difficulty of the exam is itself been stepped up? If that is not the case, then JAM needs to be able to look at it and know why that is going on.
I know Ayo has questions for you. Ayo.
Well, thank you, Mokwe. One first question that comes to my mind is something that a number of people have also spoken to, and that is the fact that some of the students who wrote the exams may have been seeing a computer in their localities for the very first time. How do you think that plays out here?
Fantastic point, Ayo. JAM, I think, out of about 700 and just below 800 testing centers. Nigeria's local government is about 774. So an average of 1 center per local government nationwide. Whereas city or prominent economic centers such as Lagos, Rivers, FCT and all will have multiples. So what this tells you is that in several local governments in Nigeria, they don't have a JAM center. What this also suggests is that looking at primary school IT penetration and secondary school in Nigeria, there will be a significant number of students that are sitting with a computer for the first time writing JAM. When I was preparing for JAM in 1992, it was the paper pencil test, PPT, that we all, and that's what we prepared for, that's what you use for practice. So sitting in the exam fever, as we call it here, was significantly lowered because what you practice with is what you're used to. So again, it will be important as part of the analysis for JAMs to take feedback from the students How many practiced with computers? How many of them did not? There are measures I understand that JAMB have put in place. They have a mock exam program a few weeks before the main exam. Perhaps they should push for the mock exam to be more mandatory so that the students have a chance to be familiar with the test centers, with the test structure in a real-life scenario. So that would reduce the challenges that they face. Another issue, apart from being there for the first time, is that there are a lot of local issues at the testing centers themselves. So perhaps that's another thing you would maybe want us to talk about.
Well, that's something to talk about as well. You may just want to add to that the fact that according to some people, there were glitches in some of the devices or at some of the centers, the CBT centers that people used to write this examination. Add to that the internet integration or a lack of it in some of these communities.
Yes, that's true. My understanding of the way JAMB have set up these exams is that they pretty much work offline at the CBT centers. So the CBT center will go online with JAMB staff, download the question, and then they stay offline for the people to test and run the exam. So where there are glitches, they're pretty much localized to those centers. Now, despite all the glitches, I would say that this scenario we're facing in JAMB is not a technical problem. It is more of a strategic planning and an operational or project/program management problem. JAMB manages each exam set from when they begin to set the question people buy from to when they release the results. So looking at the entire chain of activities and managing that successfully, I would say hasn't gone very well this time under a usual stellar performer, Professor Oloyede. So I'm sure that the team is put together and he himself will really take a close look at this and solve this problem.
How confident are you that this team that they have put together and the fact that they've decided to handle it this way would restore confidence in those who are writing the UTME exams?
First, my confidence level is high in the prof. I've not met him, but just by reputation. I think also that they will need to do something specific for those who have complained. A repeat exam, a receipt exam, something that would enable those who have not written this exam or who have issues with this exam to take it again. Let me quickly say that I attended 2 secondary schools, and my first secondary school in Lagos had problems with their WAEC exam. Their exams were not released. The results were not released. And till today, there are a significant number of people in that school that never went back to write the exam. And that changed because of their lives. So this is something extremely serious for the students who are affected by this, and JAMB needs to take it that seriously. You may be permanently changing the course of people's life if you don't give them a chance to fix this.
Well, we do hope that this certainly will yield the result that is satisfactory to both JAMB and those who have complained. We have to thank you very much for coming on our program. Mr. Boson Ayeni is the CEO of Compumetrics. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, just to remind you, if you live in Lagos or around it, or you intend to use this road, that the Federal Ministry of Work has announced a planned road closure for critical repair works on the Ijora Marine Bridge from Sunday, May 18th, 2025 by 7 a.m. for 21 days. So be notified that there will be a road closure from Sunday, May 18th. That's on the Ijora Marine Bridge in Apapa. Well, that's how we leave today's program. We have to thank you so much for being a part of our show. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Enjoy the rest of your day.